that fella Gary, he was out there trying to hunt down mermaids. He thought maybe he might have saw something that looked like it was a half human being that had a very large tail fin, but he just wasn't sure. So he spent the last few years of his life trying to find one though out there. He died hunting down mermaids. To my knowledge, he never found anything absolutely, to prove it. But that was one thing about Gary, that, if he says absolutely I know something is for real, it was because he had done research and found absolute evidence. He wouldn't say that he found something or saw something unless he had absolute evidence he could share with everybody. But he was unsure whether or not he saw a mermaid, but he was certainly trying to find one, and thought that was kind of interesting. But speaking of back to giants, though, I've seen some very large animals. Come through my clinic, and I actually got to meet the world's largest horse several years ago. It died back in, I think it was 2021 when it died, but it was almost 7 feet tall. And I got to meet it. It was very cool. It was very nice meeting this very large horse. It was very majestic, is the word I would use. It had big eyes. It was a beautiful horse. It was very cool. And I've seen some very large dogs as well. You think of a Great Dane, you think Great Dane is a big dog already, but I had a couple that had a Great Dane. They named him King. He was a little bit bigger than the average Great Dane. He looked like he could have been a little horse. He was quite a character, too. I treated him for some eye infection one time. That was something else to see him coming into the office. I've seen some large cats as well. Some very large cats come through my clinic as well. And one large animal that kind of stuck with me and I'll never forget was a young gal. She was about 12 years old. She had a very large Guinea pig. I don't know if you know what a Guinea pig is, but it's kind of looks like a rodent of some kind. But this particular Guinea pig looked like could have been a very large capybara. I don't know if you know what capybara is, but it's a very large rodent-looking thing. And but her Guinea pig won several awards at some of the state fairs, and it was a prize-winning guinea pig, and she loved it. She treated it just like as she would a child. I mean, she was a young girl, and she took very good care of it. And she brought it into my clinic one time, and I treated it for an ear infection. Had an ear infection. Then there was another time when it had gotten its foot stuck in a fence, in a chain link fence, and I had to treat up its little foot, put it in a little splint and all that, and help her heal it. And it was a very, very interesting pet, of course, the Guinea pigs. And it was kind of sad, though, because it ended up coming up missing one time, and it was pretty sad. I guess her father wasn't very fond of it. Her father didn't really care much for it. And her mother had been in a car accident when she was 5, 6 years old and had died in a car accident, so it was just her and her father. But her father wasn't of the right mind, I can tell you that right now. He was quite a character. Everybody in town kind of knew he was a little bit messed up after losing his wife in a car accident and having to raise his daughter by himself. But she loved that guinea pig, though, but he hated it. He did not like that guinea pig. He hated it with a passion, and she would tell me stories how he would be kind of mean to it sometimes, and she fought with him several times on it because, housing something like that. I mean, we're talking about this big, giant, rodent-looking thing, and he had full run of the basement, I guess. That's how they set it up. They let her house it down in the basement of their house, and she had a big fenced-in yard that it could go outside and run around in, and, like I said, she took very good care of it, but I guess if I wasn't fond of the droppings and the waste, because it would just pee and poop anywhere they wanted to, and she, did her best to keep it cleaned up, but apparently there was one day when she had gotten up and go to school, and instead of going around and picking up all this mess like she would do every day she would go around and pick up any mess that was left overnight, so there wouldn't be nothing left there during the day while she was at school. And there was one time when she got up late for school, and she didn't take the time. She figured she would just clean it all up when she got home from school, and everything would be all right. And apparently it wasn't. She said when she got home, he was just gone. There was no sign of her guinea pig anywhere. And she called him the Great Guru. I guess that was his name, the Great Guru, or GG for short. She called him GG. And when she got home from school, like I said, Gigi wasn't anywhere to be found. She couldn't find it anywhere, and she looked all over. She went outside, looked all over, and just told the house trying to find it. She came down to my clinic, asking if I could help, and I gathered up a few people around there, and some of my lab workers, and they went out helping her try to find it and locate it. We never did find it right away, but after about a week or so, she came into my clinic. She was crying, just very upset, just beside herself. And she said she had found Gigi. She found Gigi. It was buried in the backyard. She had seen an area before that she hadn't noticed because her father had this like old engine from a automobile sitting in the yard off there on top of where it was buried. So she didn't really notice that the ground was all disturbed under there until she was out just really looking close, trying to find any sign of where Gigi could be. And she noticed that the ground underneath this engine was starting to sink a little bit, and she got a couple of the neighbor kids to come over with her with a big old 2x4, I guess, or something that she used to move that engine. She got it up underneath there and moved it just a little bit, just enough, and she could see that there was something buried underneath it. And sure enough, that's where her guinea pig was. That was where Gigi was. And when she found it, she talked to her dad about it, and he at first denied any knowledge of knowing what had happened to it. He acted like he was all upset too, that it was missing. And we all kind of wondered, everybody there at the clinic and at the laboratory, we all wondered if maybe he might have made it disappear. And sure enough, he ended up confessing, telling her that he had come home from work, and because he worked overnight, he worked the third shift, so he would come home sometimes after she'd already left for school. And he had been at work all night and worked a few extra hours, and when he got home, he said he was just really tired, and he said as soon as he walked in the house, it just smelled so bad. It just smelled so bad, he just couldn't take it anymore, and apparently he went and put Gigi's lights out and then buried it in the backyard. And they never got along after that. In fact, there was an investigation from Child Protective Services, from CPS, and he ended up going to jail, and she ended up living with her auntie for quite a while. And when she turned 16, she just kind of became her own adult. She took care of herself from there on, but she would always come down to the clinic to help me out. She'd help clean out cages and any animals that I had to be board there on site. She would help me take care of them, and she was a very smart girl. She was very, very smart, and they just could tell it just tore apart. It was quite sad. I don't know if I want to say anything more about that. I think that's about enough about that. I saw a very large bird too, as well. I met a very large bird. There was a very large macaw that came through my clinic one time. It had something going on with its beak. It was all kind of smashed up, and they weren't sure what happened to it. And I took a peek at it and was looking at it and everything. But this bird was very large. It was about 5 feet tall from the top of his head to the tip of his tail. And it was very heavy, very, very heavy. It was quite a heavy bird, but they taught this bird, or rather this bird just learned, because these birds talk and they learn from the sounds and the words and stuff spoken around them. But they would sit down with this bird and watch horror movies, where people are screaming all the time and yelling help and all that. So this bird would repeat different lines and different words from the horror movies they would watch. So it was quite a thing to him when they brought him into the clinic. He was screaming, "Help me! Help me! Help me!" And they explained to me that they had been watching horror movies and subjecting this poor bird to horror movies, and it was mimicking what he was hearing in the horror movies. So it was quite a character to have in the neighborhood, supposedly, where they would live, and there were neighbors that supposedly didn't like that too much. There were a lot of false calls to the police department, thinking that someone was being murdered or something. But it was quite a character too. And I've seen some other very large animals, just about every breed or any type of animal you can imagine I've had through my clinic, and there's been some pretty big ones too that are pretty memorable. But but on the other side of that, I've seen some very small things too, including some very small human beings that were a little bit smaller than like what they would call little people or midgets. I've seen some very small human beings. It was over in the UK. Traveled to the UK for part of the summer one time, and while I was there, they showed me there was this village, and there was these very small people. And I'll tell you that about in another story, because right now I want to go and get out in the hot tub. I need to get soaking. My feet are killing me. So anyway, that'd be another story for another day. I'll tell you about some of the little things I've seen, because I've seen some real small animals too, and like I said, small humans. But anyway, I didn't want to end that on a sad note with that girl's guinea pig, so hopefully I was successful in that.